Hello and welcome. My name is Zateo, and today we're going to be going over Seagull's review of a DSDR game. This is a game that actually I was in as well. Now, Seagull is a 46 TS player. He is quite strong, and there might be things that I say that he would disagree with, but we'll find out. I'm going to try to point out a lot of the things that he does well, as well as some of the mistakes that he makes. Though the mistakes are going to be more on the strategy side of things and not necessarily on the micro side of things or build order side of things, but we'll see. I'm going to take it off the player camera actually and put it on player view. There we go. Alright, solid opener. Very good to get one win before your third mechs, but you want to prioritize getting the mexes. That just helps balance your economy to be able to afford that third mechs and more wins afterwards. So he goes up to 4. I don't. Yeah, he probably couldn't have gotten away with just 3 wins. Sometimes if the win is really good, you can just get 3. Other times you want 4. I'm not 100% sure in this case, but either way, it's kind of a minor thing. So let's see, you open up with some rovers. Looks like you got 4 constructors queued and 1 blitz. 4 constructors to me on this map feels like a lot, but it kind of depends on how you utilize it as well. If you decide to go for like converters and start converting wind, then obviously you need more guys to build wind to width to meet the demands. So your first one's going out to grab the metal, which is of course what you want to do because you want to prioritize metal, especially on this map where there isn't very much metal. Please excuse the scribbles. So 2 rovers out. Let's see, can you get anything done? You decide to get out of here because of the turrets going up, and actually there's some shurikens out already, so they're actually going to stop you in your tracks. And also, just to point out, I think you waved off of green because you saw some kind of defense there. Wow, there's a lot of scribbles. Please don't be that guy, it gets quite annoying. So yeah, looks like you're going into Janice. Your blitz is out in the front, just kind of guarding the place. And yeah, Janice is a solid choice, pretty OP in a way. Pretty choice. So here, you have 2 constructors on your lab. I would argue that given how low the metal is on this map, and given that you're completely out of metal, it might be more beneficial to have one of these guys getting wins. This is why I don't particularly like opening with 4 constructors. I'll do 3 and then get some like blitzes to get to the fronts, and then I'll start working on medium tanks and Janice, and then maybe add on a 4th at some point during that, because otherwise he's just kind of sitting here not doing too much. Looks like a big party for Contra here, our green player. Lots of grunts, it looks like. I'm kind of surprised that he pulled back there. He actually could have gotten this. I suppose if he did see the blitzes, this would be the reason not to. Blitzes could interrupt that. See Seagull. Okay, so you got your commander out here. Everyone's taking a nice forward position. Okay, so you grab this mech. So I like this. Personally, this, like, in a way it feels like it's Brown's mechs because it's like here. But to be fair, like, you're the higher TS, and at the same time, like, if he asks for it, you can just give it to him. At least for now, it's producing for the team. And Brown actually skipped this metal. I'm not sure why he would do that. Definitely grab that because there's not a lot of metal on this map, so prioritize those mexes. I guess really quick to point out Pink's solar here. Now, you don't necessarily want solar on this map because you're so metal starved, and solars are very inefficient in terms of metal cost. But in general, like talking in general, if you're getting solar collectors on the front, it's kind of nice to put them by turrets like this, because anything that tries to attack from this angle will hit the solar instead of the light laser tower. Now, of course, there's some projectiles that can go over the solar collector, and that's mainly because the tower is so much taller. But the nice thing is, like, solar collectors can take a lot of hits, and once they die, they generally leave a corpse, against most T1 units or T1, attacks. So it will die and create a wreck, which still acts as a wall until it's gone. So, it's kind of useful. Yeah, drawings. Looks like Rovin's doing some damage back here too. Alright, so we keep on with the mexes. We actually got 3 here now. Unfortunately, that doesn't leave a lot for Brown here. Nice, taking out that solar is quite good here. Taking out the position. Yeah, so this is already a nice forward position. Oh, let's check back on your eco. Okay, so you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now you're up to 5 constructors. I like the idea that you have these guys starting to queue up some converters for your win to get a bit of extra metal. Quite nice on this map. Yeah, your build power, or I was gonna say, I don't know if you can really support like a con turret here. But in general, I mean, it is nice to have a con turret to help with the wind and stuff. So I mean, kind of understand that. Contra doing some thug shaking. Pink's got a nice forward lab here. That's kind of in the danger zone if he keeps getting pushed though. But meanwhile, back at your base. Yeah. So the thing about the construction turret is I feel like, yeah, you should turn off your construction vehicle production if you're going to do that. Because certainly that's going to be a lot of build power. Okay, just adding some towers there. Or Janus. Okay, Janus mostly medium tanks. And the dark brown player is getting some fighters up for you. Nice little like smattering of, there's some fighters here, there's some in the middle, having some at the bottom. Yeah. I think, yeah, there's like 2 air players, which is kind of odd. But it is kind of important for holding, like this position on the mountain. I should say important for grabbing it. Holding it, you can have your own static anti-air. So yeah, I feel like, I mean, these are maybe a little bit pulled back here, but maybe you're doing stuff back at your base. Like these could potentially be up here instead, but obviously if you're looking away you want to pull them back, so just something I'm noticing. So here I'm noticing some idleness with your lab. Okay, so this is your T2 timing. So this is one of the questions that you were asking in the thread with the replay. Your T2 timing to you felt a little sluggish or a little bit like off, like it could have been better. Yeah, I'd say with eating this at this current time, like it's going to be a little bit late. You're going to stall just a little bit first, which I mean that you're going to stall anyways, right? Because it's a T2 lab on a poverty map, and it's going to feel horrible. It's not going to feel correct because you're going to stall. In a lot of cases, unless you're detonating your commander or something. Doing some nice repairs up here. Yeah, I'm not sure if you knew about the missile trucks when you built these LLTs, but I feel like the LLTs are a little bit much here because they aren't going to be able to shoot the missile trucks. So I mean, this potentially you could reclaim to make your lab a little bit better, or a little bit, yeah, more efficiently. And then the other thing is because you're also building on all this winds, like it slows it down a little bit. But of course you're going to want the winds, so like it's totally fine, right? Maybe you could cut some of the converters out. But again, yeah, the converters don't provide any metal, so it's, not really going to help you there either. So yeah, it's just going to feel horrible in a way. Either way, you're still at a nice frontal position. I do like this attack. Just little pokes here and there, getting some Janus shots off, which basically is like a confirmed kill. So like, and then coming back to repair. Hell yeah. Looks like you prioritize the mechs, which makes sense, especially since you're trying to get T2 at the moment. Yeah, just repairing your stuff. Oh, here's a pause. Oh, it's kind of a long pause. I don't actually remember this match, like at all. I just remember playing up against Smash Heat here. But yeah, now your T2 is done. And this brings us to our next question. Alright, so you're producing consoles, and I believe you're gifting them out right away, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, there's the first one. Second one. Alright, so your question here is it a mistake to build these consoles? Is it a mistake to give out T2 and consoles to everybody? Or to at least a few teammates? And of course that's a question of, or the answer for that is, of course, it depends. It's going to depend on the game state. How well are you doing? Can you afford to not build units and not build economy for a little bit? By giving them out. If they're paying for it, I suppose that's another thing, because at least you're getting the metal back for it, right? And then it's just like a little bit of build time. But since they're not paying for it, look at your position. Your position's good. You're at a nice frontal spot. Yellow and orange, me and Matu are doing quite well up here. Matu is holding, I'm holding, and I'm holding at a frontal position. Pink down here, although he was kind of threatened early, he's got a reasonable position here, so he's kind of safe. So that by itself, I would say like, yeah, that's a reasonable play, right? If the entire team wasn't doing so well, or if one of the players wasn't doing so well, I would definitely prioritize giving it to them first, assuming that they can utilize the benefit of it. And so it kind of becomes this thing of like, yes, you can afford it in terms of positioning, but you also have to consider, are the other players on the other team ecoing? Is there is there a player here that's just building like some fusions right now, or starting to, type of thing? Do you have a player that's also giving stuff out and or ecoing up? Is there someone planning for the late game, essentially? Because if there is, then you might want to consider pushing sooner than later, or getting your own eco in the meantime. Because by giving them out, you're setting yourself back on units and on economy, essentially. The other thing to consider is, can you make any predictions on how well the enemy team and your team is going to do with the late game? And that goes back to like, is one of their players, hard ecoing? Is one of your players hard ecoing or not? If you're not, or if your team is not, you might want to think about, have you seen any units from this player? Have you seen any units from this player? And sometimes it's just air units, and you know what to expect. Like they spent units on air, so therefore they're not going to be hard ecoing probably. So you want to make a comparison between your team and their team, and realize that your team does not have someone going hard into that. You have a player that just got T2 just like you did. They're giving away cons. So that's going to help your team, and you don't necessarily need to give away cons. Although, giving away cons to help keep a forward position would be nice. So in a way, you don't have to make a direct comparison of like I'm not making units and I'm not making eco. I'm just spending on giving away stuff. Because by giving away stuff, you're actually still providing units to the team, even if it's not like you building them, right? You're giving them your teammates the tech advantage of T2, by allowing them to build hounds before they have actual T2 economy and lab and stuff. Um, so that's what I'll say about the console part. And then, if you also give away constructors, like that's of course another added cost, and it adds up if you give enough of those away with consoles. So lots of things to consider. If I were to look at this game, I'm looking at it from your view. I'm looking at Brown doesn't have the strongest of economies. Tan here does not have the strongest of economies, although he's working on it. Lots of wind coming in. Um, just thinking about where these players are at in terms of economy. Like Pink doesn't even have that great of an economy, right? So looking at all that, adding that up and saying, okay, our team in general is not great on economy. So it might be better to try to push in general instead of going crazy on economy. And so yeah, I would say yes, probably a good idea to give out some consoles and T2. You might end up giving away too much. Like if you give one to light pink and you give one to tan, you give one to brown and you give some to yourself, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's a huge cost. And I would personally consider, getting your own T2 con out, eating your lab with the metal storage to upgrade your mexes first and foremost. And after they're upgraded, decide, are you going to build the lab and give out some workers to other people? Are you going to just try to crush this position? Or are you going to go harder into economy? And again, given the game state, I would argue you have one of their really strong players almost dead. And you're taking that advantage and saying, I'm getting T2. But then, in a way, you're kind of giving some breathing room to green by spending that extra like frontal position you have, getting consoles and T2 for your team. Whereas I personally would, go with the upgrade mechs part, because that way you're getting, a stronger economy than your opponent. I mean, yours is already stronger because you have a frontal position, right? But you're improving yourself that way, and then with that extra money, then you're getting the consoles for people, and then like the consoles in a way are cheaper at that point because you have the extra economy coming in. And your teammates in this position don't necessarily need a console to hold on, but the console can help them push forward if they're, if they're, in a in a good spot. They could potentially push forward with it. So you could also look at like specific like little zones and say, okay, so orange here has plenty of towers, or not plenty, but like he has some towers. He has some units as well, but it's also hard to push tanks and things, down these routes. So if he had a console, what would hounds bring to the table for him? And to some degree, it would help against this, right? But then let's say like they just get a jammer, and then the hounds can't really push here, or if you look at yellow here, which is actually me, yellow or I have some tanks and stuff, but it's also going to be hard for me to push up here because there's two players essentially guarding this zone. And hounds might do the trick, but it might not. And I guess the other thing they consider is, even if they have a console and know how to use it, do they have the metal to use it? And on this particular map, it's hard to get the metal, right? So like, it's they might not be able to use it to the full benefit because there's less metal on the map. So I guess, yeah, I would definitely prioritize the metal extractors, given all that stuff that I've said over the past, like, probably like 10 minutes by now. Like, geez, like, sheesh. Uh, let's unpause and see how this plays out. So yeah, just gifting consuls out. Bit of danger for your commander. Yeah. I mean, even given like Green's unit, the types of units that he has here, he has a lot of missile trucks. He has a lot of like thugs and grunts. And he has a few tanks, right? Given your army, if it was reinforced with more medium tanks and Janus and stuff, it could probably roll this position. The only thing is, you kind of have to deal with a player coming in this way then. If you're all the way up here with your army, you could get sideswiped, and your reinforcements could be killed off here. Sorry, your view went off. Yeah, they could take out your reinforcements and make it so your army cannot get back to base. So in a way, it kind of depends on, do your allies have stuff here to keep these units in place to contest that zone? And that gets tricky because, then you have to be on the same mindset as your team. And as it is, let's see, Rovin is, well, he's producing units. It's hard to just straight up produce units like this. You kind of need more economy like you have going on. You have these forward mexes as well that add a lot to the situation. And then of course, your darker pink player could also potentially have units out here, but there isn't a lot. It's just like, that tower and solar I was talking about earlier. So there really isn't too much to contest units pouring out of here, but you also know that there's a lot of static. And so potentially there isn't as much of an attack path because there just isn't units. But it's hard to know that. It's hard to know that, but you can see the towers and say like, okay, he probably doesn't have too many units, considering that. But just know that there's that potential. So yeah, I mean, so your question has so many different facets and things to consider that it is very hard to think about all that in the moment. So this is a very, very hard question to answer. So you're getting that T2, starting to gift those out. Yep. Yeah, the other thing that I've heard too, and I've witnessed this a few times. If you gift everybody T2 at the same time and consoles at the same time like this, just like everybody gets one, all of a sudden this player starts upgrading mexes, and this player starts upgrading mexes, and this player starts upgrading mexes. And that might be okay, but if everybody's upgrading mexes all at the same time, they're not producing units, right? Or if they are producing units, then they're upgrading their mexes very slowly. So it gets kind of like, is this going to be just everybody is upgrading and now we're screwed because we don't have units, or what? So just things to consider as well. I forgot to mention that with my spiel. But yeah, so many things to consider with this question. I do remember this. I remember Green poking up here, taking this here, and then I just didn't even notice until late. Yeah. I have my own decisions to make, and I don't think I made them all that well this game. But yeah, now that so I guess right now in this paused state, looking at the game, looking at you versus Green, Green has fielded quite a few units by now, which means he probably doesn't have T2 economy. It's just T1 units, and this is pretty typical of Contras, so that kind of hammers that in for me. And just spec cheating, yeah, so he doesn't have anything besides the labs, the T1 labs. So you're in a great position economically speaking. You know, assuming that you are upgrading your mexes and shit. Um, Here, I would say, um, yeah, I mean, metal is so hard to come by on this map. Now, granted, you have some extra ones because of these mexes here. But because metal is so hard to come by, I would argue it's more important to do things like get a metal storage, eat your lab, and then upgrade your mexes. Um, you know, just because, you know, you're not going to really have the metal to support both efficiently. You do have a little bit of extra metal at the moment, but I believe that's probably going to start going away pretty quick here, especially since you're also getting wins. Yeah. Okay, so you stop the lab while you do this. Okay, so that's fine too. Um, these guys could definitely be assisting. Yeah, I don't know. You're probably looking at the fronts because Contra's being rather aggressive as he does. Um, but yeah, I was gonna. Oh, okay, so I think you look at the situation up front and you say I need some more units, so you start producing. Pretty reasonable stuff here. I don't know if you really need to slow produce. I mean, to me, just getting the mexes up is just so crucial. Alright, well, you got your monster coming out. Oh, and this is unfortunate that Brown's making a forward outpost here while this is getting pushed. But there's that console you gave him. There's that hound that he produced with that console. I know one of the things that you said in your the thread here is that it feels like you don't have as much impact with your units and stuff, and that's, I mean, that's just how it's gonna feel. You know, you give away a lot with consoles and T2 and stuff. You're not boosting yourself, you're boosting your teammates. So it's gonna feel like you have less than you should have. You know, and that's pretty normal. You know, given all that. Let's see how this pans out. Okay, so, oh, here's some more hounds that you basically produced. So, you know, like, you're not doing nothing, that's for sure. But yeah, like, the enemy had to scoot back because of the hounds. They're, you know, enemy sees hounds, it's pretty scary, right? Sorry, I don't know why I clicked up there, just kind of habit to go back to myself. Bit of idle time here. Yeah, this is something that, like, it's easy to do if you're like, hey, I want to prioritize, you know, the construction turrets and then produce units. It's easy to like queue up some construction turrets, go to battle, and then look back later and everything's idle. You know, stuff like that. So what I try to do, because yeah, it's sort of like you need to prioritize the battle sometimes. So what I'll try to do is, you know, put those construction turrets in, but start queuing stuff up right away. And the construction turrets, you know, assuming you have the settings set, they will prioritize other construction turrets. So those will get produced first, and then you just, you know, they'll hop on producing units right after. So minor blunder here that ends up making it so that you start really getting a ton of metal here. Yeah, and I would argue you need more construction turrets too. I don't know. I don't mind seeing a couple of extra construction turrets, especially if your metal gets this high. You know, it's at this point it's not like a huge cost or anything. You know, you got your T2 mexes, so like no big deal, or not as big of a deal, I should say. Your energy's starting to get kind of low though. We'll see. You probably start. Yeah, you start a fusion. It's all good stuff. And you send, okay, so you're sending this new constructor out to assist the front, upgrade some mexes. Oh, there's some bombers back here, nice. I wouldn't mind seeing these go in right now actually, because there's a good chance that there's no anti-air here. There might be like, you know, a tiny bit here, but you could just like skirt the bottom. Because yeah, this map again, very little metal, so like people do not want to get anti-air if they can help it. They want to cut that cost out. But yeah, your Mauser's sitting up here doing some stuffs. Some more idle time. Yeah, I mean, I feel like you could just queue up a little bit. And I understand not queuing up because it's sort of like you want to just get this done and then prioritize the mexes and stuff up here. So it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I guess the other way to maybe do it is like, so you have these guys, instead of just guarding this guy, you have them just assist building this and then right click on your factory again and have this guy queue up the converter so that it's started and like kind of going, but you don't have a ton of build power on it until you want to prioritize it. Just an idea. That's definitely not something you have to do or anything. That's just like an idea to maybe solve that. But yeah, like I was saying before with the consoles, you know, now that it's been a little bit, you know, let's take it in a little bit. Well, I guess first I'll just talk about these ticks. Like I like the idea that you're doing this actually. You know, the zigzag essentially. I would say that because this is so porked up, you might not want to zigzag through the pork. I would consider maybe zigzagging, you know, a little bit more like this or something. Because yeah, that's not going to help anybody if it's all just going right into their pork. What was I just saying? Oh yeah, so I wanted to take a look at the game state and, you know, talk about the console and stuff. So given that you gave out consoles and T2, it looks like the game state is basically like Contra has gained a little bit of room. You know, you guys have definitely had to back out of this zone. You know, so, you know, giving the consoles and the T2 out basically puts you behind economically and unit-wise. While it helps your allies, you know, produce, you know, stronger units, it's also kind of hard to do it on this map, again, because it's Poverty Simulator. You know, so there isn't a lot of metal to work with to produce those hounds. So there isn't like a giant bunch of hounds running around. There's like little smatterings everywhere. Yeah, in terms of like white has some here. Pink. Pink has one left, I guess. Or no, he has some back here. And so yeah, it's sort of like it's hard for them to use it. And I feel like in this particular case, you're so close to killing Contra, you could have just gotten away with it, perhaps. Granted, or given that's again, units can flank you down here to cut off your army and prevent Contra from dying and stuff. But again, there's a lot of pork here, and it's going to be hard for him to actually produce a ton of units to do that with because of the pork. So I feel like, you know, it would have been a better choice to get units. You know, now that we're looking at it in hindsight, you know, and it's hard to make that decision on the fly for sure. Very hard. Okay, get out of there. No, that's E2. Oh. Yeah, by this time it looks like this guy even has some units out. I wonder if... Okay, so I'm going to just check really quick because I'm curious to know... Okay, he does have some economy going as well, so I mean, you know, he's producing these T1 units out of that economy. Reasonable choices. So yeah, at this point he has the pork that he built earlier plus the units plus the economy. And when I say units, it's, you know, once in a while he's got a unit. It's not like a ton of units. And they're just Janices, so like not that big a deal. But for you, let's see, what are you doing in this particular case? Okay, so you switch to Starlights. So I feel like if you're planning to switch to Starlights, this feels like a bit much. I mean, maybe one converter. Team might be producing some extra energy as well, so that, you know, two might be okay. It's just that, you know, Starlights cost so much more energy, and it's 1,000 energy per shot, and they attack pretty quickly. So your energy is probably going to be draining here as they shoot. Um, Personally, if I do things like Starlights or Snipers, I try to get maybe a second and third, maybe even a fourth storage. Oh, look at this. Brown's doing some helping you out with some building. This is pretty smart by him, actually. Like Morgan, you know, I've played with Morgan a few times now, and I know him as the player that actually like looks around the map and tries to do the thing that's necessary. He does a pretty good job of it, but yeah, in this case, it looks like he's chosen to assist your lab with his own money, and that way, you know, you can produce a smattering of Starlights to defend your position here. You know, so this should help out significantly. It's not like a ton of build power, but you know, it's definitely something. Actually, how much build power do they have? I forget. Okay, so 60 for the T1 aircons. Let's go back to Seagull, player view. All right, catch my breath a little bit. All right, so your money's starting to rise a little bit again. So actually, let's see, does it keep rising? Okay, so it is draining as you're producing units, but it goes up a little bit every time because there's a little bit of time as the Starlight comes out. Now you're a bit idle again. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was gonna say like it's potentially possible to have a couple more concerts here. I don't know if this is a mistake or if this is planned, if you're like intentionally not building more units. But I think that's something to be careful of. I've seen this for a few players now where it's like, you know, they produce a smattering of units and then stop, and their metal starts rising. And it's sort of like, you know, they're trying to figure out what to spend it on next. I guess for me personally, I try to plan things out a little bit more. So to me, I would produce the Starlights, and then while I'm producing the Starlights, I'd be thinking of what's my next step. What am I going to be doing next? Is it another fusion? You know, am I going to go for an Aphis? You know, maybe I need some supporting units for the Starlights. You know, there's always lots of different choices, of course, so it's quite hard to come up with the exact right answer, you know. Okay, so you start queuing up some more Starlights right away, so that's fine. Yeah. See your metals. Okay, so you go for another fusion, add on some more consorts and stuff. Oh, you're eating your wins. Let's see, what is the wins? Wind is 12. Okay, I'm gonna have to look because I don't quite remember. Let's take a look at that thing. I always forget the numbers. I don't know why. Okay. Okay, so wind is actually, so was it 10, right? Oh, it's 12. Okay. Wind at 12 is actually more efficient than advanced fusion, which automatically makes it better than a fusion. So unless you need the space for stuff, you might want to consider planning and building your wind turbines where you're not going to need the space, you know, in later games. But also, just keep them if they're not taking up room. You know, you don't necessarily need that because you know, they only need to be. Let's see. Yeah, at 12 they're technically slightly better than Aphis. But even if it was at 10, I'd say like at this point they're still worth it to have around on this map where, you know, average is quite high. Oof. Ooh, enemy Starlights. You got your own Starlights. I wonder what your plan is for this. Okay, so you start an Aphis. I don't know. I feel like this isn't safe right now. Like sure, like yeah, this is a lot of pork, so you can kind of ignore these dots because it's just, you know, if you're looking at the minimap, you can kind of ignore you know, this light bluer, you know, bare metal. You can ignore him right now because it's just all in pork, right? Contra is probably teching up or ecoing up, I should say. or has already at least a little bit, it looks like. Um, and I would say you have, you know, like even if I didn't look at Contra's base right now, I would say that you probably have the eco advantage on Contra specifically. On this player, maybe not. You don't really know. On purple, you don't really know. What you do know, he has some units out here. So given all that, you know, given that Contra, you know, maybe isn't, uh, you know, he probably is starting T2 units and stuff. Like you don't see a lot out here, right? Um, you know, but it's at a point where he probably has the T2 economy by now, right? And this guy definitely does. He definitely, you know, has Starlights out, so there's that. And then this is just a lot of T1 pork, so this is, you know, you can basically cross this off and not worry about it as much, right? But given your eco lead, and given that you have, you know, a player here that does not have much economy, a player here that doesn't have much economy, and a player here that they have some stuff going on, but like it's not a lot either. You know, so basically this whole side is weaker in general. But in a reasonable position, has a reasonable set of units. I would argue instead of trying to like greed over getting more more ahead, I would maybe try to push this. But even if you are trying to greed for it, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess it's really not that much units, but it's definitely a situation where Contra could start building a lot of T2 units at this point. You know, so it gets a little unsafe. And then, you know, seeing these units up here, you don't know if they're still cranking out units or if they just stopped at this point. But yeah, it's getting a little rough at this point, and I guess just want to hammer in the idea of like, you know, you guys had so much ground early, or you guys didn't have this. You had like, you know, you were out here. This bottom part of the pork didn't exist yet, and you had an opportunity to basically kill green, and gifted the guys out. So I would argue, yeah, definitely kill him if you can. Especially in this situation, because it's not very likely that this player is going to have a lot of units and this player is you know going to have enough units. It's going to be hard for this guy to get support. And if you do see a lot of their units on the field, then you know that, okay, I can't really get away with pushing. And you also know that they're not going hard eco at the time, which means, you know, that means it might make more sense for you to go eco, and get those T2, you know, T2 mexes. It makes more sense to gift out stuff, and yada yada yada. I don't know. I'm kind of talking in circles a bit here, but I'm just trying to hammer in that choice. And yeah, you and I talk quite a bit, so like, or you know, once in a while at least. So obviously we can talk about this more and stuff. Talk about it as a group. Yeah, I just hope I'm making myself clear for anybody watching out there. Of course, feel free to leave comments, and I will read them and respond to them. So do that if you got questions. Let's see. Okay, so the Aphis is going to be done here soon. I want to see what you do with it. Obviously, you get the converters. Here's the rise of the metal. Oh, okay. Contra actually wins Tremors here. Interesting choice. I think they do outrange Starlights. You're trying to get that commander. Hit him. Shoot him. Wow, he's still up. A lot of those must have been misses. Oh, here comes the Tremors too. Kind of unfortunate. Oh, now he's out of radar range. Or no, he's just cloaked. Okay. Well, there goes those Starlights. That was unfortunate. Alright, so you got your Aphis, you got your converters, you got an anti-nuke. I'd very much argue this is a bad spot for it. You know, if you think about it, it is covering this whole area. Um, but ideally it would be either up here or down here somewhere. You know, so that you're covering more of an area. Cover your brown guy, you know, your player down here. Um, yeah, because this only really covers you, and I guess it does cover white as well. So I mean, you know. I mean, I don't know if it was a situation where it's like, oh crap, I don't have anti-nuke, let's build an anti-nuke real quick, and you just like put it down somewhere. Um, you know, which then I can understand that. It's just ideally it would be more centralized between some more people. Alright, so what do you do from here? So you ate your lab. Does that mean you go in T3? Okay, T3 right as I say it. This choice I'm not quite sure about either. So the thing about T3 is a lot of those units are not going to be good when it's just like one or two of them. You kind of want a bunch of them. I mean, Razorback can do quite nicely against like, you know, a collection of T1 units or something. You know, arguably Vanguard can outrange these Tremors. So like, you know, it sounds reasonable, but at the same time, you're spending a lot of money on producing just a few units, basically, compared to like T2 units that your opponents could potentially produce a lot more of. Yeah, and Razorbacks can do okay against some T2. Vanguard is nice for backlining stuff, but like, you know, if they push while you're building your forces up and don't have that many T3s yet, it feels to me very unsafe. So I would actually delay this a bit further, get more T2 up first, and then build that. Especially given that Brown is not, like, they do not have a lot of units out here either. You know, so this is pretty darn naked, right? I mean, you have this veil here, so it's like, I don't know how much, you know, running in they're gonna do, but like, yeah, you could get barraged by these Tremors and lose that veil pretty easily. You know, that you could easily lose this pulsar as they see it, you know, where the attack's coming from, and target it. So yeah, to me it just feels very unsafe. Looks like you're given some skyhooks too. I'm quite curious about that. I'm not sure if you asked about it. It could have been, you could have been asked, or you could have asked Morgan. You could have asked Morgan in voice chat for it. So I don't quite know if he just gave it to you or you asked for it. But either way, I'd like to see what you do with it. Hopefully something. Okay, so you just, okay, I think I see your plan here. You try to build up some pulsars here, while you actually get some ticks in here as well. So you actually have full information on Contra now. Yeah, so you're trying to keep units at bay with these pulsars, and you're building T3 units, or you're about to. I would say pulsars. I mean, it's once you have a bunch of them up, they're gonna be nice against T2. But I'd say before that, it's gonna be a little bit rough. I mean, I suppose they do. Actually, do they outrange 1400? What do these Tremors have? Oh, I gotta turn off the view. 1470. 1400 versus 1470. So yeah, they do not outrange Tremors. So they don't even have that benefit, unfortunately. Let's put it back on your view. There we go. Yeah, so Tremors potentially could take these out. You need units to actually kill the Tremors. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, so while this is nice to drive away these pulsars, which might be the whole reason of you getting them, you know, obviously they're not going to do well against spam and stuff. So basically what I see here is a big, what's it called? A big weakness. You know, you have these pulsars that do well against bigger units like this. You have some T3 coming out, or will have come out, I guess. You know, to deal with, you know, that are also like big, heavy, you know, units. And then all of a sudden, Spam might be an issue, though. You know, you have Razorback to potentially deal with that. But I don't know. I suppose it just feels a little slow. Okay, so here, I don't know if you see this or not, but this is quite a bit of ticks. Now, let's see, where is your view? View's out here.
Stealthy units detected.
Oh, stealthy units. Yeah, so I'm not sure if you caught the ticks.
T2 unit detected.
But yeah, if you knew about the ticks and how many there are there, I'd be like, oh fucking shit, I need some anti-tick now. I would actually pull guys off of here to start building some what are they called? Dragon's Claws. Or Maws if you're Cortex, but yeah. Start building those, start building beamers, like, you know, just like stuff. Build the stuff. Because yeah, that's going to be quite annoying. As, you know, again, because Pulsar is weak against spam, you know, your shoot, now I forget the name of them. The moving Pulsars, the other Tachyon, the Starlights. Starlights are also weak against spam. You know, and actually a lot of T2 is kind of weak against spam, except for, you know, of course, like Jaguars and, you know, other anti-spam stuff. But T3 is also fairly weak against spam, especially Vanguards. I would prioritize the Razorback if you can, but obviously I don't think you even know about these quite yet. That's a bit unfortunate. And of course you can also get Junos, but that's going to take too long, and this is obviously coming in right now. Oof. So this unfortunately has the potential to do quite a bit to Brown here. Oh, okay, they all die on the mechs. Never mind. I mean, all they had to do was run back here, you know, just make like a line here and sit there. Take out all the wind, take out the converters, take out the, I don't know, it had the potential to do stuff. But yeah, so now you have your Vanguards out. Yeah, the thing about T3 is it you know, it takes so long to build and you get so few units that in a way it leaves holes, it leaves gaps where an enemy could do stuff, and you're in a way relying on your allies to cover those weaknesses. Or, you know, holes in the defense. You know, it obviously depends on the map and, you know, probably a million other things, but yeah. Start getting light laser towers. So this is pretty heavy spam here, and unfortunately I don't think anybody has Junos. Yeah. So I mean, that alone, like, this is a big enough weakness that you guys might be screwed now. Oh man, just look at all these shurikens. See if Brown responds. Oh, he sends a few. Oh, but then the enemy fighters come in and he's got to send more. Okay, yeah, reasonable response there. Not that he's really, you know, there isn't really a ton here to protect anymore. But yeah, that's just so many ticks. Yeah. I would try to, like, you have the build power to crank out a Juno pretty quick. I would maybe prioritize building one of those really quick just to, like, have against this for in the future. And then of course, you know, trying to build stuff to guard against that. Obviously, okay, you got a Razorback out. This is so heavy though, I would even consider two. Okay, so it looks like you're just flopping back and forth between Razorback and Vanguard. Yeah, I mean, honestly, spam might be okay for you here too, but like if you were to go spam, it might be okay. The only thing is, you know, obviously you gotta avoid the tremor shots, which, you know, are in this zone at this time, and then you also have to avoid all this pork, which, since it's still alive, you know, there's a lot of beamers in here that are going to be quite nice against spam as well. So Um, yeah, spam might not be the option in this case. I feel like there's probably a potential to bomb, just FYI, because A, you set this player back so far that they're not gonna, like, you know, they're gonna be kind of shit in the bed in a way and thinking about, like, I need to catch up in economy, I need to catch up on units, and yada yada. And they're gonna want to cut the corners of anti-air. You know, so this is probably a good place to bomb. Here, I'm not sure. Okay, so there is some anti-air back here that obviously you'd have to be worried about, but like a surprise bombing run, I think, is quite nice sometimes. Um, and all you'd have to really do is take out this position, and then, you know, then it's just one less player to worry about later on. Obviously, the ticks are the big worry at the moment, so take care of that first. Oh, some good D guns. Oh, that guy's dead though. Okay, here's the second Razorback. So this should start doing a little bit better. Of course, you need to worry about your ally hitting you with Arbiter shots. Actually, yeah, I mean, Razorbacks keep them far enough back that you don't really have to worry unless you're like constantly walking forward. Interesting. What are you doing back at base? Okay, so you're just like all in on T3 at this point, which reasonably so. Okay, you are getting some spam. All right, spam, spam, spam. Are you target firing with these? Looks like you're not, but you could be. Instant death. But yeah, I would say anytime you see a dot that's not, you know, that light blue color, I would try to go for it with your vanguards. Oof. EMP'd. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of what I mean with T3, like, you know, it's like they're all kind of specialized, right? You know, like Razorback, you know, anti-spam, right? Does well against it, does okay against T2 as well. Vanguards outrange a lot of stuff. Slow to attack, but the thing is, neither of these units have anti-air. You know, so you kind of need like a third unit to deal with that. You know, I forget, does Marauder? Yeah, Marauder has one. Titan's kind of too expensive. Lunkhead is, you know, it's not a water map. And obviously you're not going to afford a Thor right now, so, you know, you kind of need some kind of anti-air, but then it's like you don't really want a T2 lab at this time, and it just kind of gets rough. I see here you're greeting for another Aphis, which I suppose is reasonable. It just feels like maybe, like, so given, you know, pink up here, and, you know, spam is also going up there, it's not just you. You know, you kind of need to worry about that as well, which basically means I would consider a couple of extra Razorbacks to just kind of park in this zone. But then, yeah, you also want anti-air, so maybe some static anti-air would help. Actually, can these? I think they can. Yeah, they can build plaques. I mean, I suppose you can kind of rely on your air player. You know, assuming they're a reasonable human being. Just know that there's going to be times when, you know, they can't instantly respond. They can't be there right when the shurikens come, so it's kind of rough, right? You know, the shurikens are going to be able to stun something when they go in there, so. And if it's too close to the enemy lines, like, they might not even think about that. Apparently they did that time. Okay, so Pink's getting some spam out for themselves, so that's actually fine up there. Oof. Too clumped up. I feel like people clump a lot, and it's good to clump in some situations, but like, you know, if you're fighting against things like vanguards that do, you know, quite a bit of AoE, the clumping's not going to help you. Um, you know, it's kind of better to spread them out and, you know, of course have that line, maybe a few guys in the front, a few guys in the back, but not like, you know, you wouldn't want to go in there like that. You'd want to go in there like this. The clump, you know, an oblong clump moving this way. Um, and the thing is, like, units or people that do that basically, like, it's kind of like, you know, it's making the front guys less efficient because they're all just gonna take some damage, right? But it's like denying them the AoE. Okay, so we're resigned at this point. It's denying them the AoE, so it, you know, things like you know, Januses or Vanguards and stuff like will have a harder time, you know, doing as much damage as they potentially can. Against a clump, you know, I love seeing a clump when I'm using Janus. It's just like, oh, free money, free extra damage. Anyways, enough ranting about that. Yeah, so obviously some stuff happened here I didn't pay attention to, so that's not on you. But to get back to the question and answering the questions and stuff, like I guess I usually do like a bullet points of like, okay, here's the things I think you should you know, focus on fixing and all that. But in this kind of replay, you know, I feel like it's more important to just answer the question, especially since the question answer is so in depth. So I'll briefly go over that again as a summary instead, or in lieu of a summary. And sadly, you didn't use your transports for stuff. So yeah, going over the whole console and builder thing. I would say yes, in some cases it can be good. However, given the state of the game, given the players near you that you're giving them to, I would say that this player didn't necessarily use it to their full benefit. This player didn't quite use it to their full benefit. And this player didn't use it to their full benefit. And those are the three players who gave them to. And part of that isn't necessarily their fault. You know, part of that is just the map is a poverty map, and it's hard to, you know, build T2 units with the T1 economy. You know, it's going to be a slow grinding process of building those hounds. The other part of it is, if you're giving them all consoles and all T2 at the same time, well, they're going to all upgrade their mexes all at the same time. They're all going to start building hounds. You know, and it's not going to necessarily be units on the front to help. Now, in this particular case, I saw hounds from each of these players. Or actually, I'm not sure if I saw one from Brown, but they had hounds and they were holding with them. You know, they forced their opponents to not push too hard, so it was useful in this case. But the other thing to consider too is you had a nice forward position here. Your allies here didn't have the greatest eco going on it, like it wasn't as strong as yours. The players over here, you know, although, you know, Brown has a reasonable economy in a way, Pink didn't so much. This darker pink player. So given that there is no other person going for economy, which basically means your team as a whole is more aggressive in a way. Like their mindset is more aggressive and less economy focused. Which means you as a team should probably push it because they might be more economically focused, and um, if you guys kind of do a half and half of units and economy, well, they're just going to be ahead on economy, and it's going to be hard to push. But if everyone was more unit focused, it'd be easier to push, type of thing. Um, sorry, I'm getting a little sidetracked actually. Um, so yeah, again, good in some situations, but in this particular case, since you were so close to killing Contra, our green player down here, I would have opted for that, and just taking that player out. Um, and not only that, it'd probably be a good idea too to let your team know that that's the plan, so that they can support you. And if they don't support you, then they don't support you. But ideally, just calling out what you think the play is, so that your teammates can act accordingly. Not everyone is going to be able to determine what your play is based on stuff. So to me, just calling stuff out is vital. It's absolutely vital. And again, they might not always listen, and it might just feel like a waste of time at times. But to me, that is just so important when it comes to higher TS games. Um, this game, by the way, is kind of a mixed bag. You got some higher TS players, and then you got some mid TS players, and then you got some lower TS players. Um, um, so yeah, just like rearranging stuff to maybe take this guy out. Um, and then your T2 timing was not bad. It just feels like shit because it's DSDR. Um, I know, and I could be wrong on that. Some really good ecoer could tell me otherwise, and I'd believe it. Um, yeah. In terms of, yeah, I guess we can sum up or talk about like the T3 transition and stuff. Um, you know, to say it again, I feel like the units coming out of a T3 factory come out slow enough that it's sort of like it takes a lot of time for them to build up enough momentum to actually attack, and it gets hard to defend by themselves. So to me, since you were so light on units and defenses here, it would have made more sense to me to get a T2 factory, or to keep producing on your T2 factory, to have enough units to support that area. Um, and then just having, because eventually you saw the spam, and then with the spam you'd be able to do, things like getting jaguars and anti-spam going, and then meanwhile you can get maybe a second Aphis, like during that. So I think or maybe you got the second Aphis already. I'm not 100% sure on the timing of all that anymore. Um, but yeah, maybe you add on an extra Aphis, and then once you have, a reasonable force, or maybe you don't add on the Aphis and just get the units. It's up to you, um, if you want to get an Aphis in between or not. But yeah, then you can eventually get the T3 once you have some support for it already. Because if you have the support for it, then it's safer to get those units out. Um, I guess to say this a little bit differently, to me, the early bits of T3 that come out, if they're alone, it feels very unsafe. It feels like they can't do too much. You could potentially run them into suicide, but then you're just kind of gifting metal if they take it out. And obviously, Contra still had a commander, so that would not be a good play either. Um, so to me, yeah, early T3 units need support of T2 units. And if they don't, then they just can't push. And it's hard for them to defend. And then things like spam just come out of the blue and screw you up. So that's my thoughts on all that. But yeah, really good game otherwise. I mean, you're sitting there making the hard decisions, and you're trying to solve, you know, this whole question, and this whole question is basically the question of how do I get better at this point? Because you're trying to think of all these different key elements to, do I give out consoles or not? You know, do I go air here? Do I go T3 here? Do I, these are the big questions that, um, you know, people in this upper TS range, have to wrestle with, and a lot of the times experience will help you through that. But I hope this video has helped you just see the different things that you can look at to help you gauge what you should do. And there's probably plenty of other things too that I've missed and I just didn't even talk about, but because there's just so many things to consider. Um, Information is very important in helping you make better decisions. At some point, you can ask your air player, like, hey, do you mind setting out some scouts? They might not get very far, they might not see very much, but just having like, a smattering of scouts, so you got like, one up there, one down here, one here. You just make like a line of scouts and then just send all of them in. You do this early, you do it often. That way, the air player has an idea of like, okay, how many fighters are back here? And if there's any static anti-air, you know that as well. And at the very least, you see the front line situation, and um, basically you're helping out your front line know like what they're up against. In the best of situations, you also see the back line, in which case, the people with the higher TS that are trying to make these decisions can be more informed to make better decisions. So I guess for me to use Seagull, I would ask my air player to do a scout like that. And if they refuse or something, it might be worth it to just produce an air lab real quick and just produce, a handful of scouts to do that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to touch on, but not so much. I mean, I suppose you could get, um, spy bots or something, but that's kind of rough. I mean, it seems like nobody has. Well, I guess, yeah, Brown has some T2 bots. But yeah, it's just, I mean, I know it's kind of annoying building a T1 lab, getting the constructor, and then eating the lab, and then building the C2 lab, and then getting the constructor, and then, actually, sorry, you wouldn't be getting the T2 constructor, you'd be getting the Ghost or Spectre. But to get some additional information, I think is very important. Uh, like it might be worth it just for that information to do all that. Anyways, I hope this makes sense. I hope there's something you've taken away from this video. I know, again, you're much higher TS than I am. Um, so, of course, take it all with a grain of salt. And, we'll talk about this. So, yeah. Anybody else that has questions, feel free in the comments. And I'm out of here. So, GG's.